This happened a few weeks ago. I was 26 and just graduated from nursing school. I took a part-time night shift at the old hospital. The place was creepy, with flickering lights and empty hallways. I thought the job would help pay off my student loans and give me some experience. But I never expected what happened that night. The first thing happened while I was in the break room. I was alone when I felt the temperature drop suddenly. It made me shiver. I thought maybe it was just a draft. Then I smelled something odd, like antiseptic mixed with a sweet scent. I brushed it off, thinking I was just tired. But when I got back to my station, I saw a patient's room door slowly creak open. I froze. Nobody was in there. I could hardly breathe. I thought maybe I was just seeing things. I hadn't slept much in days. But as the nights went on, things got weirder. I started hearing whispers. Soft murmurs echoed through the halls at strange hours. I convinced myself it was just the pipes or the wind. It had to be, right? But my heart raced every time I heard those sounds. I felt like someone was right beside me. Then one night, I was cleaning an empty room when I found an old handwritten note. It was crumpled and faded. It said, "Leave before it's too late." My stomach dropped. Who put this here? Did other staff feel this way? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It made me uneasy. Another night, I walked past a room and saw a shadow move. I turned to look, but nothing was there. It felt like the shape had darted behind the door. My heart was pounding. I thought I was just tired, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I wanted to convince myself I was imagining things. Then, late one night, I stepped into a hallway and saw a figure at the end. It was just standing there, facing away from me. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. I asked, "Is everything okay?" Then it turned to face me. His face was dark, like a void. I blinked and, just like that, it was gone. I stood there, frozen, scared out of my mind. I didn't know what to think. I wanted to leave, but I was still on the clock. I kept replaying everything in my head. The whispers, the shadows, the warning note. My time in that hospital felt like a blur of dark rooms and unsettling moments. I still wonder what I experienced. Maybe it was my imagination, but a part of me thinks it was something more. I don't know if I should have left when I had the chance. I still get chills just thinking about it. A night shift at an old hospital is not just about caring for patients. It's about confronting what may be lurking in the dark. I was back at the old hospital the next night, my nerves taut. I had tried to convince myself that my experiences were just my imagination. But the feeling of dread hung around me like a heavy fog. I needed to focus on my job, but I couldn't shake the thought of the figure I saw. Every corner felt like it held a secret. Midway through my shift, I was at my station when the nurse's station phone rang. It startled me, slicing through the silence. I picked it up, my voice shaky. "Hello?" There was only breathing on the other end. I called out, "Is anyone there?" But the line went dead. I set down the receiver, my heart racing. What was that about? My mind raced through possibilities. I quickly glanced around, half expecting to see someone standing behind me. The night crawled on, but my anxiety only grew. I tried to distract myself by checking on the patients. As I walked down the corridor, the shadows seemed to cling to the walls more than usual, warping as I passed. I stopped in front of room 217. The door was slightly ajar, something I could have sworn was shut earlier. Cautiously, I pushed it open. The room was empty, just as I expected. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something on the floor. I crouched down and picked up a small, rusty key. My heart skipped a beat. What was it for? I looked back toward the hall, feeling an overwhelming urge to explore. I didn't want to appear paranoid. Maybe this old key belonged to a storage closet or something. I decided to take it with me. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being led on some kind of twisted treasure hunt. Later that night, while restocking supplies in the storage area, I overheard the faintest whispering again. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't in my head this time. The voices were clear. It sounded like they were calling my name. I spun around, but the room was empty. Cold swept over me like a wave. I glanced back at the door, half expecting to see someone standing there. I bolted from the room, clutching the key tightly, my heart pounding. What was happening? I felt drawn to find out what the key opened. But what if it was better left untouched? I stood in the hallway, staring at the door leading to the basement. A chill ran down my spine. Should I take the risk? Then something caught my eye. A shadow flitted across the end of the hallway, moving toward me. My breath hitched as I took a step back. The figure reappeared just for a second against the flickering lights. I blinked, and it was gone again. I didn't want to be alone anymore. I started to walk quickly, wanting to get back to the nurse's station. But then I heard a voice. It was clear, resonating with an urgency that sent chills down my spine. Help me. I stopped dead in my tracks. Who was asking for help? I turned to follow the sound, my heart thudding loudly in my ears. As I approached the end of the hallway, I hesitated. I had this gnawing feeling that whatever I found might change everything. Then I saw a door slightly ajar. A cold breath of air wafted past me. It carried the same antiseptic sweet scent I noticed before. I took a tentative step toward it, my heart racing. What lay beyond that door? I gripped the key tightly, feeling as if it held the answer. But one thing was clear. I needed to find out what was waiting on the other side. The door creaked open as I pushed it gently, the sound echoing in the stillness. I peered inside, my heart pounding. The room was dimly lit, with a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. Dust motes danced in the light like tiny ghosts. As I stepped inside, the air turned frigid. I felt an inexplicable pull toward the back of the room, where a tall cabinet stood. A feeling washed over me, a mix of curiosity and dread. The whispers from before seemed to echo in my mind, urging me to investigate. I approached the cabinet cautiously. My hand trembled as I reached for the latch. I hesitated, wondering if I should turn back. But something inside me pushed me to keep going. What did I have to lose? I had already faced shadows and eerie voices. This was just another step deeper into the unknown. With a firm tug, I opened the cabinet door. It groaned in protest, revealing shelves filled with old medical supplies and dusty files. But it was the floor that caught my eye. I noticed something glinting in the faint light, buried beneath a pile of papers. I leaned down and pulled away the debris. It was a small, silver bracelet engraved with a name, Emily. A chill snaked down my spine. I didn't recognize the name, but I felt an eerie connection to it, as if it held a story just waiting to be uncovered. What happened to Emily? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from somewhere in the hospital. My heart stopped. I jerked my head toward the door, the sound of my breathing thunderous in my ears. I was torn between the urge to flee and the need to know more. My pulse raced as I held the bracelet tightly, weighing my options. The crashing noise echoed again, followed by a distant shout, "Help!" The same urgent plea from before. This time it was undeniably clear. Whoever was in trouble needed me. I knew I couldn't turn back now. With a surge of adrenaline, I bolted out of the room, clutching the bracelet to my chest. I followed the noise, my mind racing. I felt as if the hospital itself was alive, as if it was leading me down the chaotic hallways. I dashed past the flickering lights, uncertainty pressing on my shoulders. "I'm coming," I shouted, my voice shaking as it bounced off the sterile walls. The calling for help continued, a torrent of desperation that pushed me onward. As I rounded a corner, I halted. The source of the voice came from a door I had never noticed before. It was old, wooden, and appeared to have been untouched for years. The handle looked worn, like it had been forgotten. "Help me!" The cry rose again, more frantic this time. The urgency felt in my bones. I had to act. I glanced down at the key in my hand, the one I found in room 217. Maybe it opened this door. With my heart racing, I stepped forward. I could feel my breath quickening, a sense of impending revelation hanging thick in the air. This was it. Whatever was on the other side, I was ready to confront it. I took a deep breath as I inserted the key into the lock, ready to unearth yet another mystery that the hospital wished to keep hidden. The key slid into the lock with a reluctant click. I hesitated for a brief moment, my heart thrumming in my chest. I turned the key slowly and felt the latch move. The door creaked open, revealing a dark space beyond. I blinked against the dimness, nerves buzzing in my veins. "Hello?" I called, my voice wavering. There was no answer, only the silence wrapping around me like a cold embrace. I stepped inside. As I crossed the threshold, the door swung shut behind me with a definitive thud, and I jumped at the sound. The room was small and cramped, filled with shadows that danced across the walls. My eyes adjusted, and I could make out shapes. An old bed, crumbling furniture, and discarded items littered across the floor. In the far corner, an ancient lamp flickered feebly, casting an eerie glow that barely pierced the darkness. "Help!" The shout rang out again, clearer this time and closer. Panic surged within me. I scanned the room for the source while clutching the bracelet. The urgency of that plea twisted my insides. I stepped further inside. My breath caught as I saw something move beneath the bed, a figure sprawled at an awkward angle. "Are you okay?" I called, my voice straining with tension. There was no reply, just a chilling silence. I approached cautiously. My feet made no sound on the floor, which was covered in a thick layer of dust. An overwhelming sense of dread seeped into my thoughts. What if I had made a mistake? What if I was in over my head? As I knelt down to get a better look, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, making the lamp shudder and flicker wildly. I flinched as dust swirled into the air. I could barely breathe. And then, in that swirling haze, I spotted her, a girl with tangled hair and wide, frightened eyes. I gasped as she stared straight at me. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rustling dust. "You have to help me." "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my throat dry. "I'm Emily," she replied, her tone teetering between hope and despair. "They don't know I'm here. You have to get me out." My heart raced. This was the Emily from the bracelet. But how was she here? I looked around frantically, feeling the weight of something heavy in the air. Shadows began to creep closer, curling in around her like tendrils. I could feel the temperature drop, and a sense of foreboding filled my chest. I was about to reach out to her when a loud crash erupted from behind me. Furniture toppled over in the hallway, echoing with an unsettling clang. My heart dropped. I jerked my head towards the noise, panic surging again. "I need to go," I blurted, retreating slightly. Emily's expression changed, panic flashing across her face. "Please, you can't leave me," she cried, desperation making her voice rise. I felt torn between her plea and the unknown danger just beyond the door. I took a breath to steady myself but felt the ground unsteady beneath me. That S when I noticed the deep shadows gathering, forming faces that seemed to watch me, waiting. I had to make a choice: stay and help Emily, or risk whatever threats were lurking outside. "What do I do?" I whispered to no one in particular, feeling the weight of that question settle over me like a shroud. I couldn't leave her. My heart pounded as uncertainty racked my mind. I forced myself to look at Emily again, her terror anchoring me in that moment. I had come too far to turn back, hadn't I? "Okay. I want to leave you," I said, my voice more steady than I felt. "How do I get you out?" The shadows pulsed, reacting to my words. Emily bit her lip, her gaze darting around the room as if searching for something. "There's a door at the back. But it's locked and I can't get to it." My eyes widened. "A locked door? How do you know?" "I saw it. I've been here for so long." Her words tumbled out in a rush. "But you need to hurry. They'll be back any minute." Fear clawed at my insides. "Who will?" I pressed, glancing over my shoulder toward the door. The last thing I wanted was to hear the answer. "The ones who brought me here," she murmured, almost to herself. They want to keep me hidden." The crashing in the hallway grew louder, rattling the walls and making dust fall from the ceiling. My pulse quickened, the urgency escalating. What if I just call the cops? I can get you out." Emily shook her head violently. "No, you don't understand. If you do that, they will know I'm gone and they will come for you, too." I felt trapped. Emily's fear was infectious. I had a choice to make: I could run for help, or I could try to trust her and find that door. I clenched the bracelet tighter, thinking of its strange allure. Just then, the lamp flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness for a heartbeat before it steadied again. I blinked, disoriented. When the light returned, Emily looked different. The shadows seemed to cling to her, casting strange shapes across her features. Was she becoming part of them? "Emily?" I whispered, fear creeping back into my voice. She didn't respond. Her eyes were distant, caught between fear and something else, something dark. I tried to reach out but hesitated, a chill slithering down my spine. "Listen, I'll help you," I said, forcing my voice to be firm. "Just tell me where the door is." "There," she started before freezing. "They're here." I turned just as the door shuddered under a heavy thud. My heart raced as the sound echoed, reverberating through the stillness. "We have to move." I bolted for the back of the room, my fingers brushing over the peeling wallpaper. Emily crawled behind me, urgency driving each of her movements. I reached the wall and felt around for a handle, an escape in the faint light. My fingers brushed against something cold and metal. I fumbled with it, my breath quickening as I turned it. Just then, another crash sounded, closer this time. The shadows writhed and twisted as if alive, crawling toward us. "Open, please," I pleaded, putting all my weight behind the door. It budged slightly. I scrabbled with the latch again, and it finally gave way. The door swung open, revealing a passageway swallowed by darkness. But before I could step through, I felt a presence behind me. Someone was in the room. I froze, fear coursing through me. Just as I turned to look, everything went black. My heart raced in the pitch black. I couldn't see anything, but I felt a chill dance along my skin. Was it the dark or something else? I froze, my breath hitching. "Emily?" I whispered, hoping to hear her voice. But I was met with silence. I tried to think, to process what just happened. The door stood open behind me, a sliver of cold air spilling from the passage. With each second that passed, the feeling of being watched intensified. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but Emily needed me. "Stay calm," I told myself. The whispers of shadows crept even closer. "Emily?" I called again, louder this time, desperation creeping into my voice. Then, something shifted behind me, a soft rustle too close. I felt a breath on the back of my neck, and I turned, instinctively backing away. But there was nothing there. My mind raced. Couldn't let fear consume me. I had to find Emily. I edged toward the door, trying to peer into the darkness where I thought the passage lay. Moving slowly, I reached out with my hand to find the doorway. I could barely make out its outline, but I knew I couldn't hesitate. I had to get Emily out. Just as I took a step into the hallway, a dim light flickered to life. It illuminated the eerie space ahead. I squinted against the brightness and froze again. There, at the end of the corridor, was a figure, a shadowy outline resembling a person, still and unmoving. "Emily!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the blank walls. The figure didn't respond. My stomach dropped. Something was wrong, a gut feeling I couldn't shake. I could make out what seemed to be Emily's features, distorted and strange against the light. I hesitated, my instincts pulling me in two different directions, towards her or back into the darkness. As I stepped closer, I noticed subtle changes in her expression. It wasn't just fear. There was something wild, almost manic, flickering in her eyes. Gritting my teeth, I waved my hand, hoping to jolt her back into reality. "Emily, we have to go." Suddenly, the figure shifted, the light flickering like a faulty bulb. In an instant, she was replaced by something else, an indistinct shadow, shapeless and formidably dark. I felt a surge of terror wash over me, and I stumbled back. "No, no, no, no." My legs urged me to run, but I was frozen. Then, a voice broke through the stillness, low and gravelly. "She is not who you think she is." I whipped around to find another shadow standing behind me. "What do you mean?" I whispered, panic clawing at my chest. "Where is Emily?" "Embrace the darkness. it said with an ominous tone. Or lose yourself in the light. Without thinking, I darted back toward the room where we started. I had to find Emily, but could I trust her? Or was my friend lost to the shadows? I felt sweat slick on my palms as I stumbled into the dark again, uncertainty gnawing at my resolve. Then, everything went black once more. I blinked, disoriented as the darkness dissolved into a faint gray light. I found myself lying on the cold floor, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. My pulse thumped in my ears as I sat up, frantically scanning the room. This wasn't the hallway anymore. It was a different space, cluttered with old medical equipment and swaying shadows that seemed to move on their own. Emily? I whispered, my voice trembling. The silence felt heavy, like a thick blanket of dread. I rose to my feet, brushing off dust from my jeans, but the chill clung to me. Every shadow felt alive, taunting me as I stepped deeper into the abandoned room. Memories of laughter and light floated in my mind. Emily and I used to explore places like this as kids, but the thrill was gone now, replaced by the weight of fear. I noticed a flickering light in a corner. Cautiously, I moved toward it, hoping to find a clue or some sign of her. As I approached, I caught a glimpse of movement in my peripheral vision. I turned quickly, half expecting to see one of the shadows looming over me, but it was merely a curtain swaying in the draft. Get a grip, I muttered to myself, shaking off the tension. When I noticed a small door partially ajar on the opposite side of the room. It was a mistake, but my curiosity pulled me closer. What if Emily was behind it? With a deep breath, I pushed the door open. Creaked loudly, echoing in the silence. The room beyond was darker, filled with tall shelves pressed against the walls. A chill swept over me as I stepped inside, the air thick with neglect. An oppressive smell of mildew lingered, and I fought the urge to gag. Searching the shelves, I was struck by the sight of old medical records strewn about. Names and dates were scribbled in faded ink. But then, something caught my eye, a photograph lying face down on one of the shelves. I picked it up, heart racing, and gasped. It was a picture of Emily, smiling, but there was something else. A second figure loomed behind her, blurred but unmistakably ominous. Before I could process the image, a sound rang out, a soft cry. My heart dropped. I recognized that voice. Emily? I called out, urgency pouring from my lips. The cry came again, clearer this time, drawing me toward the back of the room where the shadows swirled ominously. I hurried forward, but as I reached for the door leading out, a rush of cold air hit me. It slammed shut just before my fingers brushed the handle. The clicking sound echoed in a way that made my skin crawl. Panic ignited within me. No, I screamed, banging against the door. But it wouldn't budge. I glanced back, and the shadows coalesced together, forming a silhouette that loomed menacingly. We will find her. But are you willing to pay the price? It rasped. I froze once more. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Something deep in my gut told me that whatever was happening, the answer was not what I wanted to hear. Then, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway beyond, steady and slow. Someone or something was coming. I turned, heart racing, ready to face whatever waited to step into the light. I held my breath, straining to hear the footsteps. They were methodical, each step deliberate and slow, sending chills down my spine. I wanted to run, but the door behind me refused to yield. Panic wrapped around my chest like a vice, constricting my thoughts. Emily! I called again, hoping she could hear me, hoping that maybe she was close enough to respond. But the silence swallowed my plea. I pulled myself closer to the dim light in the corner, praying it would offer some safety. The footsteps grew louder, reverberating through the walls. I squinted into the darkness where the sound was coming from, desperate for clarity. My mind raced with horrific scenarios of what could emerge from that shadowy hallway. Then, suddenly, a figure appeared, tall and cloaked in darkness, barely discernible against the backdrop of the flickering light. My throat tightened, and I took a step back. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice trembling. The figure paused, just outside the reach of the light. "Are you lost?" it asked, the voice gravelly, echoing with an unsettling familiarity. My heart skipped a beat. "Emily?" I gasped, hoping against hope it was her. But it wasn't. The figure took a step forward, the light illuminating a visage that was both haunting and terrifying. It looked like a person, but its features were warped and indistinct, shifting almost like a smear on a painting. I stumbled backward, realizing with horror that it wasn't merely a trick of the light. "Get away from me!" I yelled, fear propelling my voice. I turned, frantically searching for another exit, but the door remained locked. "Emily needs your help, but you must be open to the truth," the shadow figure said, its voice laced with urgency. The chilling words clawed at my resolve. "What truth?" I demanded. In response, the figure raised a hand, and suddenly the room around me shifted. Vivid flashes of images and sounds bombarded my senses. Emily and me as kids, laughter echoing, then darkness creeping in, moments of her fading, and those whispers that rattled through my mind. "Let her go," I shouted, clenching my fists. I wouldn't let it take any more. But the figure only gave me a knowing smile. "You want to find her? You must confront what you fear. That is the only way." Just as those words sank in, a fierce wind rushed through the room, sweeping the papers off the shelves and scattering them like autumn leaves. The shadows twisted violently, and before I could react, the figure lunged towards me. I braced myself, heart racing. As it reached for me, my instincts screamed to evade, and I leaped aside. The shadows erupted, swirling around me, and my surroundings began to spin violently. Then, just like that, everything went black. In the dark, I could hear whispering, distorted voices. My eyes darted open, but I was no longer in the room. I was suspended in an endless void, whispers continuing to echo all around me. And then, from the darkness, a flicker of light appeared ahead, a silhouette urging me forward. There was no choice now. I had to find out what lay ahead. But the question gnawed at me. Was I ready to discover what truth awaited me? The light drew me closer, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. I hesitated, even in the darkness, aware that something was waiting beyond it. But fear of not knowing held me captive. With a deep breath, I stepped forward. As I crossed the threshold into the light, the whispers faded. I found myself in what looked like an old hospital room. The sterile smell of antiseptic was sharp in the air, and the flickering fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead. It was as if I had walked into a scene from the past. I glanced around, searching for anything familiar. Old hospital equipment stood at odd angles, and the paint on the walls was peeling. My heart surged with a mixture of nostalgia and dread. Memories flooded back. Emily, lying in a bed just like this one. Pain wrapped around my chest again, an unwelcome reminder of the losses I've buried deep. Then, a sound caught my attention. A wheeled cart creaked near the door. I turned quickly, half expecting it to be Emily. Instead, a nurse emerged, dressed in the wrong era. Her uniform was as outdated as the room itself. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her face shrouded in shadow. Her expression was serious, her eyes dark pools of concern. "Where's Emily?" I blurted, panic clawing up my throat. "The truth is not as it seems. You need to understand where you are," she replied, her voice calm, but a quiver broke through. "You cannot hide from it." I clenched my fists, refusing to back down. "I'm not hiding from anything. I need to find her." The nurse shook her head slowly. "Finding her requires confronting what you've buried. You're not just looking for Emily. You're searching for yourself." Before I could respond, she disappeared, gliding through the doorway as if she were a figment of my imagination. I was left alone, the air thick with uncertainty. My heart thudded loudly, drowning out the silence. Determined, I stepped further into the room, searching for clues around me. The four-drip hung quietly, its contents barely visible through the flickering lights. Then I caught sight of a pile of old medical records strewn across a nearby desk. I approached, adrenaline and dread battling for control. Flipping through the papers, I found Emily's name scrawled across the top of a report. My breath caught, Underneath her name was the word missing. I felt my insides twist. It was impossible. I dropped the papers, shaking my head. No, she's not missing. She's right here. Suddenly, a chill swept through the room, and the lights flickered violently, throwing shadows everywhere. I froze. Outside, I heard a faint whispering, the same whispers from the void. They were calling my name. I turned back, but the door slammed shut with a loud bang. Panic surged again. This was a trap. I wasn't meant to find answers. I was meant to confront my fears. Then, just like that, everything went dark again. When the light returned, I found myself back in the void, the silhouette beckoning me forward once more. My heart raced. Could I face whatever truth awaited me? What if it took me deeper? What if I never came back? But there was no turning back. Desperate to find Emily, I pushed forward, determined to unlock the secrets that lay beyond. I stumbled forward, still grappling with the remnants of darkness enveloping me. Each step felt both familiar and foreign, as if I was journeying deeper into my own psyche. The silhouette loomed larger, flickering in and out of existence, like a shadow playing tricks on my eyes. Emily? I whispered cautiously, a mix of hope and terror clenching my throat. As I approached, the light expanded, revealing a dimly lit room that could have belonged to any era in the hospital's checkered past. A bed sat in the corner, the sheets yellowed and dusty, and scattered medical equipment lay abandoned. Yet something felt incredibly wrong. This wasn't just an old hospital. It was a graveyard of memories. My heartbeat echoed through the silence, growing louder as I caught sight of a figure seated on the bed. It was Emily, or at least a version of her I recognized. She looked at me with desperate hope, but there was also an underlying flicker of something darker. "You found me," she said, her voice trembling, taking a small, shaky step forward. "Emily." I was so worried. "I thought I lost you." I rushed towards her, but the closer I got, the more that flicker in her eyes shifted, warping into something else, something that felt wrong. "Do you really want to help?" she asked, a strange edge to her words. "Or are you here to figure out what's next? 'Cause it's not what you think." I paused, catching the tremors in her voice. "What do you mean?" "They're looking for you. We need to get out of here." Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped. Shadows grasped at the corners, as if alive. I stepped back instinctively, feeling the anxiety crawl beneath my skin. The whispers returned, wrapping around my thoughts, weaving their urgency into my mind. "Help me," they beckoned, but I struggled to tell who or what I was supposed to help. "Please listen to me," Emily pressed on, her voice wavering. "You have to accept what happened. The darkness feeds on denial, complicates everything." "No," I said firmly, shaking my head. "I refuse to believe you're part of it. I believe you're trapped. We can get you out." "Can you really?" she countered, tilting her head slightly. The shadows seemed to inch closer to her, and I felt my resolve buckle. "What if I'm already too far gone? Do you even know what happened to me?" As she spoke, the environment around us twisted. Each word seemed to peel back layers of a nightmare I didn't want to confront. Missing. Lost. The reports, the shadows, it all coalesced into a sinking weight in my stomach. "Emily, I'm here to help. Just tell me how," I shouted, desperation coloring my tone. Suddenly, her face contorted in anguish, and I felt an icy breath on my neck. "You have to face them. Face what you buried. Only then can we both escape." "Face who?" I cried, glancing around for threats. "Who are the them?" A rush of wind tore through the room, sending papers flying and me stumbling backward. The echoes of that same haunting cry resonated in my mind. "Help me!" It was me, my voice lost in the fray. I turned to Emily, expecting her to guide me, but she looked pale, helpless against the encroaching darkness. "I'm sorry, but you need to let go," she breathed, the light in her eyes dimming. "What do you mean?" I stammered, vulnerable. But before she could respond, the shadow behind her lunged, merging with her body. A scream ripped through the room. Was it hers or mine? I blinked, and in that moment, everything shifted. I found myself back in the dusty, abandoned corridor, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My spirit felt both free and trapped, tethered to the image of Emily. But the haunting truth lay buried deeper than I had imagined. The dark hospital pulsed at the edges of my consciousness, waiting for acknowledgement, waiting for confrontation. I sprinted toward the exit, propelled by instinct rather than clarity, feeling the shadows draw back, sensing my fear. The fleeting images of Emily and the suffocating atmosphere of uncertainty chased me down the hall. I had no answers, but I couldn't let this darkness consume me. With every ounce of will, I bolted toward the light at the end of the hallway. Suddenly, I burst outside and into the night, gasping for fresh air. The world felt surreal yet overwhelmingly peaceful. An untainted canvas contrasted against the hospital's silence. But as I stood there, heart racing, the past clawed at my thoughts. What had I missed? Did Emily truly remain lost within? And were the shadows still stalking the corners of this world? I moved away from the hospital, breathing deeply, but a part of me knew that darkness doesn't just fade. It lingers. I've never been back. I still wonder if Emily is still there, trapped in the maze of her own story. But mostly I try not to think about it.